In the dark winter of 793, a shock ran through the kingdoms of England. The monastery of Lindisfarne, a place of prayer and learning perched on the rugged northeast coast, was attacked. From the grey waters of the North Sea came Longships, their dragon-headed prows cutting through the waves. The Vikings had arrived. They struck without warning. Monks were slain, sacred treasures stolen, and the monastery reduced to smoldering ruins. The Christian world was stunned. These men from the cold, distant lands of Scandinavia were unlike anything England had faced. They were fierce warriors, cunning raiders, and masters of the sea. And this was only the beginning. In the early years, the Vikings were seen as marauders, threats to be feared and appeased. But the raids were more than random acts of violence. They were the harbinger of a strategic, relentless invasion that would change England forever. By 865, the Vikings escalated their campaign. A massive army, later known as the Great Heathen Army, landed in East Anglia. It was not a small band of raiders. It was a coalition of warriors, organized, disciplined, and driven by ambition. Among their leaders were names that would become legends: Ivar the Boneless, Halfdan Ragnarsson, and Ubba. With axes and swords, shields and spears, they moved like a storm across the land. East Anglia fell swiftly. Its rulers could offer no resistance to the Viking might. From there, the army turned north, setting its sights on York, a jewel of the Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Northumbria. In 866, the city fell. Its walls could not withstand the fury of the Vikings. York was renamed Jorvik, and under Norse rule, it flourished as a center of trade, craftsmanship, and culture, a city that bore the dual mark of conquest and settlement. The Vikings were ruthless, but they were also strategic. They didn't merely plunder, they imposed order, collecting taxes, establishing laws, and consolidating control. The Kingdom of Mercia soon faced the same pressure, and the southern kingdom of Wessex, ruled by Alfred the Great, prepared for the storm that would define his reign. In 878, the Vikings' march of conquest brought them to the heart of Wessex. Alfred faced the fearsome Guthrum, a leader whose reputation for cunning and brutality preceded him. The clash at Edington was monumental. Sword met shield, blood soaked the fields, and the fate of Wessex, and perhaps all of England, hung in the balance. Alfred's forces, though outnumbered, fought with extraordinary courage and strategy. The battle ended in a decisive victory for Wessex. Guthrum was forced to accept baptism and retreat, leading to the Treaty of Wedmore, which temporarily divided the land. But while Wessex survived, the Vikings remained a formidable force. Northern and eastern England came under their control, creating the Danelaw, a region where Norse laws, customs, and language intertwined with Anglo-Saxon traditions. Towns thrived under Norse influence, markets bustled, trade flourished, and the imprint of Scandinavian culture became permanent. Even with the Treaty of Wedmore, raids continued. By the late 10th century, England faced renewed challenges. Vikings returned with greater ambition. In 991, at the Battle of Maldon, English forces confronted Viking raiders in Essex. Despite courage and determination, the English were defeated. The poem that recounts the battle immortalizes the bravery of the defenders. But it is also a reminder of the ever-present threat that loomed from the north. The early 11th century brought even more dramatic changes. Sweyn Forkbeard of Denmark, a king of unmatched ambition, sought to claim England. In 1013, he invaded, forcing King Ethelred the Unready into exile. Sweyn claimed the throne, though his reign was brief. His death in 1014 cleared the way for his son, Canute the Great, to continue the conquest. Canute, however, was not merely a raider or warrior. He was a ruler of extraordinary vision. From 1016 to 1035, he ruled England, strength and wisdom, establishing a North Sea empire that included Denmark and Norway. He brought order, enforced laws, and fostered trade, demonstrating that the Vikings could be not only conquerors, but also architects of governance. Despite their growing power, the Viking era in England was not eternal. English kings learned from experience. Fortified towns, strategic defenses, and unified armies gradually turned the tide. One of the final, most decisive moments came in 1066 at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Harold Hardrada, King of Norway, launched a daring invasion, believing England ripe for conquest. King Harold Godwinson met him with a determined army. The battle was ferocious, spears clashed, swords rang, and thousands fell. In the end, Hardrada was slain, and his forces were destroyed. The Viking threat that had loomed for centuries was effectively over. Yet the Vikings' legacy was far from vanished. Their settlements endured. Cities like York thrived as centers of trade and culture. Place names, laws, and even language bore the mark of their influence. Words like sky, knife, and window are Scandinavian in origin, a linguistic echo of centuries past. The names of towns ending in by or thorp remind us of the people who once sailed from distant lands to settle in England. The Vikings were a people of contrasts. They were destroyers and builders, invaders and settlers. They brought terror, but they also left a lasting mark on society. They challenged kingdoms, toppled kings, and reshaped the landscape. Yet they integrated with the people they conquered. Their story is one of resilience, adaptation, and enduring impact. From the burning of Lindisfarne to the fields of Stamford Bridge, the Vikings reshaped England. They arrived with axes and shields, but left behind towns, trade networks, and cultural influences. They carved a chapter of courage, strategy, and survival into the history of a kingdom. The story of the Vikings in England is one of conquest, chaos, and transformation. It is a tale of warriors who became settlers, of battles that changed the fate of nations, and of a culture that fused with the Anglo-Saxon world to create something new. Their era may have ended, but their legacy endures, in cities, in language, and in the imagination of generations who look to the past and see the Longships on the horizon, the clashing of swords, and the indomitable spirit of the men from the north. The Vikings came for conquest. They stayed to leave a mark, and centuries later, the echoes of their swords, their songs, and their settlements still resonate across England. From terror to transformation, from raiders to rulers, the story of the Vikings is a story that will never be forgotten.